It's TK Friday, and today on The Joy of Editing, we're going to explore Orton. And that is the Orton Effect, that dreamy glow that we get on landscape images and all types of images. It's really great. There's 3 different Orton type effects in TK9. We're going to explore them all and dive into them pretty deeply, so stay tuned. Hello everyone, and welcome to The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and happy 2024 to everyone out there, and also happy editing to all. Today it is the Orton Effect. Now we have 3 different Orton effects inside of the TK9 plugin for Photoshop. We're going to explore all 3 of those. I have some different images here to show you how they work. We'll start out with this first image, and I will use all 3 of the different Orton effects on it, and I'll give you some tips so you can really take advantage of the dreamy glow you get with the Orton effect. And by the way, if you don't yet own the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, you can save 15% off the TK9 plugin for Photoshop along with training videos. Use my promo code DK15. That gets you 15% off of everything. Not only are you saving money, but you're supporting the joy of editing with Dave Kelly when you use that promo code DK15. So thank you all for using my promo code. I really appreciate it. By the way, in case you're wondering, the Orton Effect is a photographic technique that involves combining a sharp image with a slightly out of focus image to create a dreamy or painterly effect. It is named after Michael Orton, a Canadian photographer who first developed this technique in the 1980s. Michael Orton used slide film in multiple exposures to achieve the effect in his landscape and nature photography. On the screen right now, you could see the different uses for the Orton Effect. You may want to pause the video and read through these, but it's great for landscape photography, nature photography, macro, portrait, cityscapes and architecture, haze, and mist. I, for one, really love the Orton Effect, and if you do too, let me know in the comments section below, and please leave comments and questions. I love to hear from you, and don't forget to please like, share, and subscribe. This really helps to promote my channel, and when you do that, I truly appreciate it, and I thank you. I just felt I needed a little bit of an introduction here first, just so you can understand what the Orton Effect is all about, in case you've never heard of it before. But if you haven't, you're in for a treat. Let's have some fun. We're going to apply 3 different Orton type effects, all from the TK9 plugin for Photoshop, on this image here first, and I'll give you a lot of tips here, and hopefully by the time the video is over, you'll understand how to use all 3 of these different type Orton effects. They're all similar, but they give you a little bit of different results, and I like to try the different ones out. And so this is going to be a good reference guide for you to go back and look at in case you need to brush up on the Orton Effect. Well, let's get started and add some dreamy glow to this really cool autumn scene. You're going to find the Orton Effects inside your actions. You're going to find 2 of them here, and you're going to find the Orton Effect in Smart Orton. And if your actions aren't open, on your combo or CX panel, look for the TK button with a little play symbol. Click that. That'll open up your actions. But here you're going to find the Orton Effect and the Smart Orton. And the third Orton is hidden away in the TK9 multi-mask panel, but we'll get to that thirdly. But let's start out with the Orton Effect. Now, I refer to this one as the basic Orton Effect, so let me give this a click, and when you do, you're going to get a Gaussian blur dialog coming up, and I usually accept that for the radius it gives me and click OK. Now, this Orton Effect is designed to be strong right out of the gate. Okay, it's designed that way, but that's way too much, but that's pretty cool. You may like that and say, you know what, that's very artistic. I'm going to leave it just the way it is. But here's the first tip for you. For this one, I would recommend taking the opacity and then just pull that opacity back to a point where you really like it. And, you know, I may say like right about here at like 40%. Now let me shut this off. Here is the before and here's the after. But isn't that beautiful on a nice fall scene? I asked Tony, I said, Tony, what do you think? And he said, well, I think warm images with a lot of like highlights in them and things like that is really good. Also misty, foggy type images. He really likes them for that. But here we have a nice warm autumn scene with a lot of nice highlights in here, and those highlights really glow. Okay, so now let me go ahead and turn this opacity the whole way back up to 100%. And now for another tip. If we study the image, you'll notice that the highlights are really light and the shadows are really dark. But notice over here, we have two layers here. We have Orton Dark Image and Orton Light Image. So what we can do is, let's click on Orton Dark Image. And now, working with the layer's opacity, now a shortcut is if you have the hand tool or the move tool, and the shortcut for the hand tool is H, the shortcut for the move tool is V. When you're on a layer, then you can click on your number keys. For instance, right now we're at 100% on the opacity. I'm going to type my 9 key. That gives me 90%. And I'm just looking at the dark areas. I'm going to click the 8 key. All right, and that's looking better. Let me click the 7 key. Okay, so I like my darks right there, like 70%. And now we can go over to the Orton Light Image layer, and what do you think? I think you guessed it, right? Okay, we still have that move tool on there, so we can use our number key. So let me type the 9 key, and what will happen is the lights will start to be not as light. So I'll type the 9 key. You see that? They're coming down. Now I'm typing the 8 key, and now I'm typing the 7 key, and now let me type the 6 key, and I like that. So now let me shut this off. Here is the before and here's the after. And if you still think it's too strong, you could come back up to the group, click on the group, and again here we can pull that opacity down. Again, now this same principle holds true. Let me type 9, let me type 8, let me type 7, 70%. And I think it's 70%. Now I'm going to shut this group off. This is without the Orton effect, and this is with it. So that is another tip for you, working with the different layers as well as the opacity. But I would recommend starting out with just the overall group opacity first. And now let me go ahead and reset all these layers back up to 100%. And I'll show you one final thing we can do here. And that involves using the multi-mask panel. And you see this button right here. This is for layer mask mode. And I'll use it to place a luminosity mask on this group layer. And what I'll do is I'll click this button here. Now I have the group selected, so I'm on the overall group, right? Which is what I want. Click the layer mask mode button. And what I recommend is a lights 1. Now you could try like midtones 3, darks 1, but to be honest with you, lights is really where that glow lives, and that's the one that I would recommend trying first anyway. And usually it will be the one you want. So let's click on lights 1, and already you can see it's really tamed this image down, right? So just by adding a lights 1 mask on there, let me shut this layer off. Here is before and here's after. At this point, I feel the lights are still too light. But remember, we have the Orton Light Image layer we can use to tone the lights down. And I'm still on that move tool, so what I can do is I'll type the 9 key and just look at the lights. There's 9, there's 8, there's 7, there is 6. So what I'll do is just pull back on the lights to like 60%. Now let me shut off the overall group. Here is before and here is after. So pretty cool right now. Let me come back up to the group. And if you want more of the effect to come in, you see this density slider right up here. If I take this slider and I start to drag it to the left, you can see I can add more of the Orton effect. So you see all the possibilities we have here. So we can have a lot of fun and get this looking just the way we like it. And you know what? I think I like it like around like 88% on the density. It lets a little more of the effect show through. Now let me shut this off. Here's the before and here's the after. And I like it. Now, let me go ahead and collapse this group and shut this one off. And now we're going to try the Smart Orton next. I'm going to go ahead and click the X here and get out of the layer mask mode. And now let's click on Smart Orton. And with Smart Orton, again, we have a Gaussian blur dialog comes up. And it looks like this. Now, I'm going to click OK. And when I do, the image changes a little bit. But that's the effect. And it is still really strong. And again, the first thing we can do is on this layer here, again, we can come and pull this opacity back. And, we may say, right around there, like 48% looks pretty good. Let me shut the group off. Here's the before and here's the after. Okay, so right there. So now let me go ahead and reset this back up to 100% and let's play around here and I'll show you what we can do. Now you'll notice we have a lot of layers in here. We have a highlight layer, we have a shadow blur layer, we have an unblur layer. We're going to look at all these, and we have a adjust contrast layer, which is a curves adjustment layer. The first thing I want to do is adjust the shadows because they're really way too dark. So we're going to come to the shadows blur layer. Just click that layer to make it active. And this is also a smart object, so you can double click Gaussian blur and rechange the blur if you want to here. I'm not going to change that, but you can do it. So I just wanted to point that out. So I still have my move tool up. So remember my little tip here. For the layer opacity, I can use my number keys. So what I'm going to do is look at the darks here. I'm going to type my 9 key. Okay, I'm going to type my 8 key and my 7 key. I'm going to type my 6 key, and I think I like my darks right there. Now we can work on the highlights. So we have highlights. So let's click on this layer and make it active. And now I'm looking at the highlights. So I'll type my 9 key. Okay, that's looking better. Type my 8 key. Looking better. Type my 7 key. I like it. Type my 6. And let's type my 5 key. You know what? I think I like the 5. Let's go to 4. Let's try 4. I think I like 4. Now, let me go ahead and shut this Orton Effect off. Here's before and here's after. So that's pretty good. I like that. It's really toned it down. But now we could come up to this layer called Unblur. Let's click and make it active. And you'll notice it defaults at a 40% opacity. If you want less glowy blur, you can increase the opacity. But if you want more dreamy, glowy blur, what you can do is decrease the opacity, and I'm going to try that. I'm going to type my 3 key, and now I'm going to type my 2 key. See how I can get a little bit more glowing effect in there? And by the way, if you wanted 25, you could just type real quick 2.5, and you'll get 25%, or 3.5, 35%. You see how that works? But if I just type my 3 key, I'm getting 30%. And you know what? I like 30% right there. So let me shut the Orton Effect off. Here is before and here's after. And if you felt you wanted a little more contrast, I really don't add it too often, to be honest with you. But you could come up here to adjust contrast, and you'll notice you have a curves adjustment here. And here's what I do recommend. I mean, you could draw an S-curve on here, and you can even get rid of contrast by lightening your shadows and darkening your highlights to decrease contrast. Or I like to use these presets. So let's click this drop down. And if you just want a slight contrast increase, what I recommend is use this linear contrast RGB. I'll click that, and you just see that little bit of a contrast boost there. So let me shut this layer off. Here's before that contrast boost, and here's after. So if anything here with Smart Orton, you might want just a slight contrast boost if you think you need it, but generally I don't use it, and you can click this button to reset. And now one more tip for the Smart Orton, and I went ahead and reset this back to the way it comes out when you just click the action, okay? So it's at full strength. So what I'm going to do is on the group itself, let's go back and click on the layer mask mode button, and let's throw a lights 1 mask on it. So let me click this button, and right there you can see looks really good. It tames it. The highlights are a little bit too hot. Let me X out of layer mask mode. I don't need that anymore. So what I want to do is, what would you think? I want to work with highlights. Well, you'll notice we have a layer called highlights, so let's click on that layer. And remember my tip, if you're using the move tool or say the hand tool, you can just use your number keys to change the opacity. So right now it's at 100%, and I'm just looking at the highlights. So let me click the 9 key. Let me click the 8 key. Now we're at 80% opacity. Let me click 7. Okay, it's getting better. Let me click the 6 key, and I like it. So we can add a layer mask on there as well, right? And that's pretty cool. So let me shut this off and turn it back on. And now if I felt I had too much glow in here, too much blurriness, what I could do is come to the unblur layer and then simply increase the opacity to take some of that blur out. So right now I'm at 40. Let me type the 5 key. That gets me to 50%, and I think that looks good. And my tip is probably don't go over 60 or 70%. If you go real high, it's going to get crunchy looking. But in this case, I think I would go to maybe 50%. Okay, so let me shut the group off. Here's before the Orton effect, and here is after, and I like that. So there's all the tips I have for you for the Smart Orton. And if you have any tips out there, let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. I'm going to go ahead and click right here to collapse this group and shut this group off. Now I'm back to the original image, and we're going to go with the final Orton effect in this image. And so we'll come up to the TK9 multi-mask panel, and you see this button right here. You're going to find some extra actions in here. So we'll click this button. And each one of these buttons gives you different actions by different people, but we're going to use the ACR Orton Action. And so we're going to click this one, and we're going to get a Gaussian blur. And this is all recommended by Nick Page, by the way. So I don't change this one. I'm going to click OK. And generally, I don't really change them, to be honest with you. So I'm going to click OK. And this takes us into Adobe Camera Raw. And you'll notice under Light, these are Nick's adjustments like plus 75 in the exposure, which can be adjusted if it's too strong. And the contrast is increased up to like plus 91. And also under color, you'll notice he bumps up the temperature. He warms it up to like a plus 26. And he shifts the tint a little bit more into magenta to like plus 17. And I find these work out really nice. And I generally like to keep it warm like this, but sometimes I will pull this temperature back. I don't really touch the tint. But you can experiment. But generally, I'm going to leave it here in the warm areas because I like my Orton glows in warm images. And so we're going to leave that the way it is. I'm not going to touch anything. And I recommend, first off, don't touch anything. Just take it just the way it is. If you need to come back and readjust, come back and readjust. But let's click OK. And there we are. This is a really subtle effect. And by the way, you'll notice this one comes with a Lights 1 mask already on it. So let me shut this off. Here is before and here's after. And basically, we have a smart filter here, and you can readjust the blur if you want to with the Gaussian blur if you double-click it. And Camera Raw filter, you can go back and double-click this and go back into Camera Raw, which we may do that. But there we go right there. Now, you'll notice the opacity for this layer is at 20%. So if you don't think this is strong enough, now let me shut this off. This is probably the mildest Orton effect you're going to get, but you can make it stronger. So what I can do is with the opacity, we'll increase it. So that's 20%. And again, I still have my move tool, so I'll type my 3 key. There's 30%. Here's my 4 key. There's 40%. Here's my 5 key, 50%. Here's my 6 key. So I like that. It's 60%. But you notice the lights are a little bit light here, and I don't have anything that says light, but I do have Camera Raw filter. So here's what I'm going to do. Double click Camera Raw filter. And what I'll do is take the exposure and pull the exposure back. And don't be afraid here. You can experiment. You can always come back here and change it if you overdid it. And I took mine back a good bit to somewhere like right about here, like minus 0.95, almost minus 1 stop, and click OK. And now you see how that got toned down. Now, if I took it back too much, which I think I did, look, just go back and click on, double-click Camera Raw filter, and we're going to take that exposure, we're going to increase it some. And let's go to maybe like a minus 0.65 and click OK. Okay, and I think that looks better. And now I feel my effect is way too strong. And so I'm still on this top layer, and I'm at 60%. So let me type my 5 key. And now I'll type my 4 key. And you know what? I think I like it there. So let me shut this layer off. Here's before the Orton effect. And here's after. Now, this is the ACR Orton by Nick Page. All these will look a little bit different. So let me shut this one off. So let's go back to the first Orton effect. So that's this layer right here. Let me turn it on. That was my first Orton effect, kind of on the strong side. But again, I could pull back on the overall opacity if I wanted to, but I like that. And now here was my Smart Orton, and I like that. That is after the Orton effect. This is before it. Here's after. That was Smart Orton. I'll shut it off, and now we'll go to Nick Page's ACR Orton. Now I'll turn on the ACR Orton. Here it is with it, and now I'll shut it off, and here it is without the Orton effect. Okay, so those are all my tips for you. And now let's just play around with these 3 images here. Let's start with this one first. And to save a little bit of time, I'm just going to apply ACR Orton to this one. And on this one, I'll do the Smart Orton, and then on this one, I'll do the regular Orton Effect. Okay, so let's go back here. Now remember, ACR Orton will be found in the multi-mask panel. You click this button here for your extra actions. This is called Workflow Extras, but they're all actions. We'll just click ACR Orton, and I'll click OK. I'm going to accept it just the way it is. That's what I like to do. First off, click OK, and that lets me know where I'm at. And then the second thing I want to do is increase the opacity. But let me shut this off first. Here's before, and here's after. And we can see the effect there, but I like it a little stronger. So again, I have my move tool, so I can type 3, I can type 4, and let me type 5. And let's go ahead and double click on Camera Raw Filter, because here's a little benefit of decreasing the exposure a little bit. You will add a little bit more of the Orton effect as well. So let me pull this back to maybe somewhere right about here and click OK and see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks better, right? Here's before the Orton effect, and now let me turn this layer back on. Here's after. So pretty cool, and I like that. And now I'm at 50%, and now let me type my 4 key. I'll just pull that back. 4. Let me try 3. I like 30%, I think. Let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. So that's pretty nice, a nice dreamy glow. Now let's go to this image. I'll click the X to get out of the workflow extras, just in case I need to get into the multi-mask panel. So here's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to use the Smart Orton on this one. If your actions aren't open, click the TK Action button. So let's click on Smart Orton, and I'll take the Gaussian blur just the way it is. I'll click OK. All right, now the first thing I want to do, my shadows are really dark and blocked up. So what we'll do is click on the shadow layer. And again, the move tool trick or the hand tool trick, you can type your number keys. So let me go to 9 for 90%. Let me go to 8 for 80%. Looking better. Let me go to 7 for 70%. I like that. 70% looks good. And now maybe the highlights are a little bit too hot. So let me go to the highlights. Click on this layer and click my 9 key. Okay, click my 8 key. And I think I like that. So let me shut this off. Here's before and here's after. And you know what? I like it. And that's all I want to do. But remember, if I wanted to, I could come up to the group and go into layer mask mode. And if I wanted to, I could go ahead and try like a lights 1 on there and see how that tones that down. And then don't forget, you also have a density slider here. And you could take this, if it gets rid of too much of the effect, you could start to pull this density back. You see that, and add a little bit more of that in there. You see that, how that lightens up. And if you click this double arrow button, you can see what that mask looks like now, right? So it's letting more of the Orton effect through, and I kind of like it. So experiment, that's the key here. But now you know all the different things you can do. So let me shut off the Orton effect. Here's before the Orton effect. And here's after. And I love it on this image. And now we have one final image. Let me click on this one. Let me click the X to get out of layer mask mode. And we're going to use the basic Orton on this one. Now remember, the Orton effect is especially good on fog and mist, as well as light areas and warm. So this image has it all. So let's just try the basic Orton effect. So let's click on Orton effect. And Gaussian blur, we're going to take it just the way it is. Click OK. Now that's way too strong, but let's try this. I do like the light glowing back through here. We can tone it down later with the light image right here, as well as tone down the darks. But we get the added benefit of toning the darks down by putting a lights 1 mask on here. It will automatically tone the darks down. So let's try that. Click this button on the multi-mask panel to go into layer mask mode, and we're going to click on lights 1. And now we can see how that lights 1 mask has kept those darks from getting too dark, and I think it really looks nice. And the lights maybe are a little too strong through here. So let's click on the lights layer, and I'm going to type my 9 key and tone those back. There's 9, there's 8, there's 7, there is 6. Which gives us 60%, and I like that. And now if the effect is too strong, we could come up to the group right here, and we're at 100%. So let me type my 9 key. Let's go to the 8 key. Let's go to the 7 key. Let's go to the 6 key. That's 60%. Let me shut this off. Here is before and here's after. And if I want a little more, I can type like 6.5 real quick. And now there's 65%. So let me shut this off. There's before and there's after. But yeah, that looks really beautiful on the fog, and I like it. Well, I hope this video helps you out, helps demystify these different Orton effects. Now, we have 3 in here, and they're all going to give you various results. So I recommend trying them all and maybe find the one that you like the best, one you may want to use all the time. But now you know how to alter the adjustments, and you'll always have this video to go back to as a reference for the Orton effect if you forget anything. Well, there it is, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on the Orton effect. If you did, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe and click that bell notification icon. Click all so that you'll receive all notifications, and then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll get notified about it. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today on The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And I will see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.